Bear down, Chicago Bears. Let's go. Welcome back to another episode of the Bear Trap, a Bears podcast by a Bears fan. I'm your host, Terry, and today, recapping our victory against the Denver Broncos. I'm excited. Well, I think we're all excited. We won the game, but there's a lot to talk about, so let's come on in, Bears fans. Let's talk about it. First, before we get started, we're all Bears fans, agree or disagree. We want the Bears to win. And number two, start the Patreon campaign. Please go to the description section. Check out the Patreon video and consider supporting the channel financially. With that being said, there's so much to talk about. I mean, this was a crazy game. So I'm going to start off with this. I started to chart the Bears this week. I think that's an exercise I'm going to do this season. And for those not familiar with what that means, I'm just charting our formations. So offense and defense, just to give context, because people like a little bit of the numbers. So as far as how much we ran and passed, you'll see that. You'll see the yards, touchdowns, all that. But for me, I want to chart our formations just to see kind of what we are identically. And I don't even, is that a word, identically? Identity-wise. Anyway, so offensively, we were in the gun. So as far as gun versus under center, we were in the gun about, as far as I charted, and again, there's a lot of human error in there because I was doing stuff. But as far as I charted, we were about 18 times. But as far, under center, we were about 18 times. But as far as the gun, we were about 40 times. So, and of course, it's going to change depending on what type of game we're playing in. But we were under the gun most times, and we do a good amount of under center, but the gun is where we really lived in. As far as personnel, we were in 11 personnel by a long margin. That was high majority what we were in. And if you don't know what personnel is, 11 personnel goes running back, tight end. So 11 personnel is one running back, one tight end. And that's what we were in most of the time, whether it was. So if you look at those two numbers, we were under the gun a lot and we were in 11 personnel a whole lot. The second closest, which isn't even close, is 12 personnel, one running back, two tight ends. And we only ran that, I counted 5 times. So most of the time we were in 11 personnel. And that makes sense. Tariq Cohen is out there in different spots. And then, of course, you got Trey Burton in different spots. He can line out as a slot as well as an inline. So 11 personnel is kind of what we preferred. As far as defense, it was not really close. We were in nickel most of the time. I mean, let's see. I got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 40, 45 times in nickel as opposed to about 17 times in our base defense. And of course, I think that changes when Bilal Nichols gets hurt. But also, again, whatever game you're playing in is going to change that. So that's just kind of what our formations were. We were in nickel most of the time. And we don't do any crazy stuff. We do a few times with dime and whatnot. But most of the time, we go Khalil Mack, Leonard Floyd, Akeem Hicks, and Eddie Goldman or somebody else. And then we bring in Busta Scrine. We go Eddie Jackson, Ha-Ha. We go Fuller, and we go Prince. That's our nickel. So we pretty basic in that. And then, like I said, offense, we like to bring in one of those tight ends, whether it's Shaheen, whether it's Burton, whether it's Broniker. And we like to have a running back in there, whether it's Cohen or Montgomery and slightly less Davis. So that's kind of what we were. Talking about my keys. So if you didn't watch the preview, watch that because I think I'm going to be doing previews each week if I can. And my 3 keys. So let's go through my 3 keys. Number 1, and I think, let me say this first. Out of my 3 keys, we failed on one of those keys. And I think that was what cost us. And I'll actually say that for last. So one of the keys was establishing the running game. So I talked about getting the running game going. As far as our ability to play action pass, as far as our ability to keep the linebackers at bay, because I talked about their secondary is still young. Even though you got Chris Harris, who is a veteran, you're still, wondering how effective he is. And then even though you got Justin Simmons, who's been around, but he was never a high-level talent, the rest of it is young, and so you wanted to make them undisciplined. Now, my thought is that looking at what we did, we didn't get the run game going to establish a nice play action. And just a heads up, I'll be doing a division recap also, talking about the other teams in the division. All three of the teams in our division set up a really good play action structure where they can make big plays off that. We don't do that. We will get under center, like I said, not a whole lot as far as gun. But when we get under center, we want to do fake jet sweeps. We want to do all these things, but we don't really pound the rock. We don't really do a traditional play action, pass attack. And so for me, that's what I wanted to see. I wanted us to establish the run, let David Montgomery go out there and do his thing, and then work off of that. That's not really what we did. We stuck to our misdirection and our gadgetry, and I don't think it was effective as I wanted it to be. So David Montgomery went for 62 yards, 3.4 average on a carry, not great. Of course, Cordell Patterson had that huge run. But outside of that, Tariq Cohen didn't really do a whole bunch. And, none of our rushing was super effective. And so that was one of the things that I wanted us to do, but we didn't really accomplish. And I think if you look at our offense, that kind of affected us. Number two, I wanted us to be penalty free, or not penalty free, but at least, not to the point where the penalties would help Denver move the ball. And I don't have the numbers on me, but looking at the game, I would definitely say we weren't moving Denver down the field. They got 14 points, and that came kind of at the end, at the last, moments of the game. And so there were a couple penalties where it was like, kind of crucial. But overall, we didn't move them up and down the field with penalties, and that's what I was worried about. Because as I said, if you play your defense, if you really play discipline against Joe Flacco, he might be able to move the ball, but if we don't allow the big play and we don't play with penalties, we should be able to get our offense the ball back, and I think we did. The last thing that I kind of put out there that we didn't really do, and I guess there's two things we didn't do, but interior pressure. If you watch it, there's a couple sacks, but we know one of them's a cover sack, or most of them are cover sacks. Joe Flacco played well, and I've been going back and forth with a couple people about this, and everybody's got their own agenda, I guess, but I don't have an agenda with Broncos and Joe Flacco. I watched him against Oakland in order to preview him, and he did well. And then I watched him today. He did well. Like, as for us having Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, and these guys, the ability for him to fit those passes where he did and keep the chains moving was great. Us as a defense, bending but not breaking, we did great. And so we didn't allow a lot of points. But you're talking about a quarterback that consistently went underneath Fuller, went underneath Jackson, went across our linebackers with great timing and velocity. He did very well. And I said in the preview, if we are planning on getting pressure on the edge with Khalil Mack or Leonard Floyd or whoever, he can avoid that. It doesn't, even with all the holding penalties, it doesn't take a whole lot for him to be able to step up in the pocket and make a play. It's only when you get pressure directly in his interior up the middle is when he can't make a play. And we saw that a few times where we got pressure, whether it was a slant or a blitz, and we got it right in his face, then the whole play shuts down. But when you try to get pressure on the outside, he can step up and still make plays. And so that's what I was worried about, and that's what I saw. Whether you're talking about throughout the game with him moving the ball and giving them field position, or if you're talking about him in the last drive where he was able to take it in for the end zone and all that, that is what I was worried about. And of course we got the win, but it could have easily been the other way. as he really showed that he was not scared of our defense and he could pass the ball on us. All right, so that's the 3 keys. So overall, the game. Look, let's get to the end of it. I mean, you had the penalty with offsides, and so then instead of the missed extra point, we then came back, and then they went for 2 again, and then they got the 2, and then it was like, wow. Like, I mean, and he made a great pass for the touchdown to Emmanuel Sanders, made a good pass. Again, he has good velocity. It was just like, okay, wow. And then we got the ball on offense with very little time, like 31 seconds, and Trubisky made a nice little play. And we got the timeout, and we got lucky. Let's be honest. If the refs could have very easily been like, "No, it wasn't 1 second." They favored us. We got 1 second, and Eddie Pinheiro. Let's clap it up. I wanted to do it at the beginning, but I forgot. Let's clap it up for Eddie Pinheiro. The man won us a game. I mean, he hit 2 50-plus yard field goals. It's like a Bears wet dream for Bears fans who hate Cody Parker. I'm not one, but one of those people that hate Cody Parker. It's like a wet dream. It's like, oh my God, thank you. But much like I said with Cody Parker and him missing the field goal, same thing with Eddie Pinheiro making the field goal. Let's not lose fact of some of the things that we can improve on as we go forward, because there is a lot that we can improve on. Number 1, I talked about running the ball. Everybody last week, we didn't run the ball enough. We need to run the ball more. We would have won. Okay, we ran the ball a lot more this week, and we barely won. So again, this whole blanket statement doesn't make sense. It's not true. If you're talking about in context versus a matchup versus what type of run, all that stuff, then I could have a conversation. But when you just say run the ball more, it doesn't always compute. And not to say we shouldn't run the ball last week. It's just that it doesn't mean we guarantee to win. We ran the ball more this week, and it didn't guarantee us a win. And so I think looking at us running the ball, because I said last week we should have ran it more. Now we ran it more, and now I still feel the same. Our run blocking is not as effective as people think it would be or should be. And that's going to be something that we need to look at, especially how we run the ball. I talk about, again, a lot of the misdirection, the trickery, and the formations. I think we got to sometimes talk about straight power, because if we want to be a zone team, we could be a zone team, but I don't think we commit to one style, and I think we need to, so we can really work on that type of style. And so our run game hasn't been effective on the O-line or with our running backs. Now, talking about the pass, I feel the same way I did about Trubisky. I don't think he's as bad as people tried to act like last week, but at the same time, I believe he is playing it safe. And when his back was pressed against the wall to make a play, even still, like, again, people want to blame the play calling. Not all of his play calling. Some of it, like the screen to Allen Robinson in that last drive, was stupid because the 2 receivers were blocking, and then he threw it to Allen Robinson. So that's not a Trubisky decision. That's a coach decision. But there's some plays where Trubisky chooses to go underneath instead of vertical. Those are the things that worry me. And he tries to play it safe, back against the wall. He extended the play and made a great pass, and then we got the field goal. Props to him. But overall, I just think he's being safe. And so I don't think in the long run, that's how we win in the playoffs. So I would like to see him have a little more confidence and aggression in his decision making. So that's with the offense. With the defense, again, we're not immortal. We can bleed. And if Flacco could do that to us, think about what any of these elite quarterbacks like a Pat Mahomes, a Phillip Rivers, or Drew Brees, if he's healthy, can do. And so those are questions we got to think about as we got to work on our pass rush. I said it last year. I said it the year before. I'm going to say it again this year. We don't have the ability to make pressure on 4-man rush. I love Akeem Hicks. He's a bear, like literally and figuratively animal. Khalil Mack, elite player. But at the same time, when you watch it, we don't get pass rush pressure like that. And I don't mean sacks. I'm talking about pressure. If you wanted to come in with quick rhythm throwing, you can get to us. And that's what was shown today. And again, bend but not break. Being able to stop the plays when it matters is a big thing. And I agree. But that's Flacco. When you get a guy that elevates their game higher than that, it's going to be scary to see when we can't make pass rush. So as much as we talked about Fangio changing up the scheme, I definitely see different looks as far as blitzes, but frequency is not a lot. We don't blitz a whole lot, maybe a percentage more than we did last year. But we might have to start thinking about it because we don't get pressure like that. And as good as Kyle Fuller was last year, as good as Eddie Jackson was, as good as we hope the secondary to be, I don't trust us just rushing forward and hoping that our pass coverage holds up, because people are going to scheme us out. And it only takes certain penalties, a good punt, and whatever, and a team that can scheme us out will beat us. And so I would absolutely like to see us figure out how we can do pressure, whether that's more stunts. And it doesn't even have to be blitzes. Like, if we're going to rush 4, we can line them up different and stunt them in weird ways. You know, we can put 3 in the middle and then 1 on the edge and then slant 1 inside and pin Khalil Mack back inside, or slant 1 outside, pin Khalil Mack inside. Kind of the funky stuff we seen with Leonard Floyd and Khalil Mack on the same side. We just got to get more creative. That's what I think. So overall, that's how I felt. I mean, yeah, that was it pretty much. I mean, I wrote down a few penalties. We had Floyd where he tackled the screen, and they called a penalty that gave him a first down. But I don't know if that affected the game, because Bowles, they got a makeup call on a bunch of him. He got a bunch of calls. One call on the outside run play for Peyton, or what's his name? Philip Lindsay, sorry. And I don't think that was a good call, but it was a makeup call. And then Bowles ended up getting a whole bunch of holding calls. So I don't, nothing too spectacular stood out to me besides the things I mentioned. So anyway, go to comment section. Let me know what you think about the game. I know it was crazy. There's probably a lot of thoughts. Share it around. Get the conversation started. Check out the Patreon. Thumbs up, subscribe. And thank you for listening. And remember, stay up and bear down.